Hello and welcome to Catalyze Music Academy. My name is Zaak Kerstetter. I'm an Ableton Certified Trainer. And today I want to talk about builds and risers and creating tension in non-traditional ways. This is something I was talking about with some people on stream the other day, and it got me thinking about what are some songs that I think create tension in really non-traditional ways. I think it's really easy to get caught in really kind of like boring generic builds before your drops. And the song that I kept thinking about is this one right here, G Jones and Eprom, Hysteria. This is a fantastic track that's been out for quite a while, but I think is still ahead of its time. They do a lot of really interesting, fascinating production techniques in this song. It's definitely worth checking out. But I'm going to talk specifically about the section from about 2 minutes and 45 seconds to about 3 minutes and 45 seconds. So a minute of just this like really raw, interesting build that I think is worth dissecting a little bit. So I'm not going to be able to play too much of it because of YouTube copyright laws that are crazy. But it basically starts off with a snare. It repeats and speeds up and gets faster over time. And then a kick drum comes in and does the same thing. And there's two notable things that are interesting about this. Number one, normally when you have drums that speed up during a build, they go up in increments of the grid. So they go from quarter notes to eighth notes to 16th notes, 32nd notes, etc. In this one, they're not synced, which allows a much smoother gradual transition from slower to faster. The other thing that I think is really interesting is they speed them up so fast that they stop becoming rhythmic and they become a pitched sound or an oscillating sound, which is a really fascinating part about how rhythm and pitch work and how they're both basically the same thing. Adam Neely has a really fantastic video where he's talking about loop, about polyrhythms and pitch and rhythm that I will link below that is fascinating if you have not checked that out. But that's what they're doing here. They're speeding it up so fast that it no longer is rhythmic, it becomes pitched. So we'll play just a second of it, and then we'll kind of like dive into how to make something like this. So it starts sounding like this. And then as it speeds up over time, you can hear that that snare that was repeating, it no longer sounds like a snare, it's now an oscillator. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. So before I dive into that, I do wanna let you know if you are enjoying the content on the channel, please feel free to subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of stuff. You can also check out my streams on Tuesdays and Fridays, or if you really want to support the channel, you can check out the Patreon, which is linked below. So we're going to start off with just a snare drum. Sounds like this. There's actually two of them. This is a snare and a clap that I have layered together. And we're going to use this as our example. It's not going to sound exactly the same way as theirs did, but you'll get the idea. So we're going to take this and we're just going to plug in one single note here. And we'll do this over the course of 4 bars, although in the example, they do this over the course of 1 minute. So it's a much longer increase in time, but we'll just do this over 4 bars for this example. So just gonna play one note. Not terribly exciting so far, but what we wanna do in order to speed this up is we are going to go to our MIDI effects and we're going to grab the arpeggiator. In the arpeggiator, we can speed up the rate right here. Which that can work. But as I mentioned earlier, we want a nice smooth and gradual increase of timing here. So instead of having this be synced to the grid, we're going to unsync this. So this is now in milliseconds, which allows us to do really cool speed up and slow down effects. And we can do this over a very long period of time to create that interesting transition from rhythm to pitch, which is pretty cool. So we're just going to take this and we're going to automate it. So I'm going to right click, hit show automation. We're going to have this start, let's see, I'm going to have it start a little bit slower. Around there. And we're going to have this obviously speed up over time and go almost about as fast as it can go. And we'll also hold on the option key and drag to add a little bit of curve to this. So that way kind of speeds up more over time. And let's see how this sounds. Cool, that's kind of what I'm looking for here. And so that's the basic concept. We're going to be using this to speed that up over time and turn that into a pitch sound to create a rising sound like you would in a normal build. So that's kind of step number 1. We're going to put a pin in that. We'll come back to it later. Step number 2 is we're going to do the exact same thing with the kick drum. So over here, I have a kick drum sample. It sounds like that. And once again, we are going to create a 4-bar loop. And we are going to have one note that goes the entire time. And we are also going to grab an arpeggiator, turn it to be free, and we will start this off a little slower. We'll go to our automation here. Let's pick a speed that we want this to start at. We'll have it start slower and then also speed up slower. And then we'll add in another breakpoint down here. And once again, we will add a little bit of curve to it. Like that. We can even make this go a tiny bit faster. So that's going to be our basic concept here. If we are trying to emulate the same kind of effect that they were doing in the G Jones and Eprom song, we would want to give ourselves a little bit more time before the kick drum starts, because we get the snare first, then the kick. So we're going to go in here and just make this start, in my case, 1 bar later, but in the actual song, it's like 30 seconds later. We'll just do this. The other thing that is happening that I think is kind of interesting is there's also a rising pitch sound. There's a pitch sound that kind of ascends over time, which I tried doing by automating the pitch on my snares. Didn't quite get the effect that I wanted, so I found the other solution would be to take something like a wavetable. Well, sounds kind of like that, and we're going to do a rising pitch to that. So we're going to be starting with a single note, and once again, this is going to be 4 bars, and we are going to make this pitch bend over time. And there's a couple ways we could do this, but we're going to do the easy way, which is just under MIDI control, under your envelopes, there is pitch bend as an option. And we're going to have this go up all the way over this set of bars. So we'll hear this by itself. Kind of cool. It works. A little bit obvious, though. So one of the things that I think will be interesting here is we want the timing of our rising pitch to match up with the timing of our snare that's also speeding up. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to be using the gate audio effect. The gate audio effect works kind of like the opposite way of like sidechain with compressor. So it means that if one volume lets through, the other one lets through. So we're going to use the gate, turn on the sidechain. We're going to receive from our snare. So now, if the gate is not passed, we're not getting anything from our rising pitch. But as I turn this down, we get something that matches the rhythm. So we can have it just barely touch the gate here. And if you want to go crazy with other effects, you can also, like, I don't know, put some reverb or whatever you want on here. And that will also just make it sound a little more interesting than just the basic sound we already have. Like that. So now we have all these things together. They should all kind of like help create our combined build. Like that into our drop. However, there's one other thing that I noticed in the G Jones and Eprom track is that the kick part is actually sidechaining the other parts. So when the kick is happening, it's creating a pulsing motion with the other parts, in this case, the rising pitch and our snare. So I'm going to hold down Shift to select both of these tracks. I'm going to hit Command G to put them in a group, or Control G. I'm going to grab a compressor, toss it on here, and we're going to sidechain this from the kick. So now, as the kick happens, it's going to start pulsing, and we can test this out and see how this sounds, the other two sounds. And we're going to make this ratio really high and threshold pretty low to make this really obvious. Go even higher with the ratio here. But that's kind of the idea. It's kind of a combination of these different techniques using unsynced arpeggiators to create a smooth sound that also turns into a pitch sound, as well as pitch risers, different amounts of gates to make things sync up, as well as different sidechain compressors to make things pulse in different ways, which is what creates this entire 1 minute really intense build. And then they actually slow it back down slowly, and then they have the drop, which again creates a lot of tension, resets the tension, and then boom, you hit them with the actual drop here. So really creative use of a lot of different techniques that I have not seen a lot of other people use, even though this song's been out for a while. And definitely a really cool place to draw a lot of inspiration from, learn a lot of things, learn a lot of different techniques for yourself, and try them out in your own productions. And that way you don't just have like really dry, generic builds. You can get creative with it. If I see somebody who's put a lot of time and effort into their build, it makes a difference to me as somebody who's listened to a lot of electronic music. So don't be generic with your builds. Think of creative different techniques you can use to build tension in your song. And that way, when you actually deliver on that tension with the drop part of your song, it's actually interesting and gets people really into your track. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed watching that. And hopefully I'll see you again in another video. Thanks for watching.